We are getting started right now. My name is James Tumusime. I work at UCC in the Corporate Affairs Department, and it's an honor for me to coordinate this event. We are privileged to have the Acting Executive Director, Uganda Communications Commission, Susan Wegoya Tengo. You're very welcome. And some members of top management at UCC whom I will be introducing shortly. Our partners from a whole range of sectors. As we all know, e-waste, the issue that brings us here today, is a multi-sector issue. It cuts across. So that's how we have such a broad coalition of partners here present today. And we celebrate all of you who have made it. Again, I'll make it a point to point out who exactly is in the room. We will be joined shortly by our chief guest, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. She will be joining us shortly as we continue on with the program. Now, a little bit of context and background to this. Exactly 62 days ago, which you could say is 2 months back, we met at Uganda Communications Commission to launch the e-waste collection, I should say ICT e-waste collection pilot project. It's been 2 months of work in the field with our implementing partners, and it's been 2 months of learning. We would like to share what we've learned today. That's what brings us here today. A number of times we launch projects and they die off. You wonder what happened to them. But this one is not dying off. And that's why 2 months later, we are already in a position to share what we've learned in the field, some preliminary insights, challenges, opportunities, and perspectives that have been gathered in the 2 weeks of the pilot, which was conducted in the 3 districts surrounding Kampala. And so that's what brings us here primarily. But secondly, today is also a special day. It's International E-Waste Day, World International E-Waste Day today, and therefore there could not have been before us. So ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, I'd like to take us through the relatively short program that we have to deal with this morning. We've already dispensed with some aspects of that program, but right now, my introductory words will be followed by a recorded message from the ITU Deputy Secretary General. As you know, e-waste is something that is dear to the International Telecommunications Union, and so we will have none other than the ITU Deputy Secretary General making a presentation which will be recorded. That's what will come immediately as soon as I step down. And that will be followed by a presentation that captures the essence of the pilot over the last 2 months. That presentation will be made by UCC's Rebecca Mukite, and that will be followed by the remarks of the acting ED at UCC, and that will be followed by a networking session where we will have a few key speakers sharing their experiences and perspectives on this matter. And then that will bring us to the concluding remarks of the PS, who will certainly have arrived by that time. I would like to, as promised, to acknowledge who is in the house. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say we have, just like I said, a whole range of partners involved in this, and I would like to mention them quickly. We have in the house MTN Uganda, we have in the house Airtel Uganda, we have in the house Makerere University, we have Uganda Revenue Authority, we have NEMA, we have Kasita, we have NSSF, we have Banana Life, we have the World Bank, Mastercorps, we have BNIT, we have Great Tax Services, we have Youth Go Green, we have, of course, our mother ministry, Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. We have NITAU, we have Badiri Uganda, Sheraton Kampala, and UTEL, which is represented by none other than the COO. Pleasure having you around, and everyone else who is here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be acknowledging the others that I get to know here, but that shows you, gives you a clear picture of who is in the house, and we are very, very grateful. I appreciate you having taken time off to be with us this morning. So on that note, and without much ado, I would like that we listen to the ITU Deputy Secretary General at this point. Thank you so much.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, it is a great pleasure to join you in celebrating International E-Waste Day 2025. Allow me to begin by congratulating the Uganda Communications Commission and all its partners for their leadership in launching the ICT e-waste collection pilot project, an important initiative that will help strengthen structured, safe and sustainable e-waste management in Uganda. As digital technologies continue to evolve at an unprecedented pace, from 5G and artificial intelligence to data centers and the Internet of Things, we're seeing extraordinary progress in digital development. But with that progress comes a pressing challenge, the environmental footprint of our digital world. In 2022, the world generated over 62 million tons of e-waste, yet only 22% was properly recycled. Much of it was either discarded or handled informally, with serious consequences for our environment and for human health. E-waste is not just about phones or laptops. It includes network equipment, servers and data center hardware rich in critical raw materials such as copper, cobalt and rare earth elements, which are essential for both the digital and green transitions, yet difficult to recover once lost. That is why ITU is working to help countries move away from the linear take, make, dispose model toward a circular economy, one where ICT products are designed for durability, reuse and recyclability, and materials are safely recovered and reintroduced into production. We know that no single organization can solve this challenge alone. Success requires collaboration across governments, industry, academia and consumers. At ITU, we're proud to work with partners such as UNEP, UNIDO, UNITAR, and the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention Secretariats to collect reliable e-waste data, support national policy development, and strengthen capacity worldwide. A key contribution to this effort is our updated publication, the second edition of Policy Practices for E-Waste Management, Tools for a Balanced and Fair Circular Economy. This toolkit provides practical guidance for policymakers and industry actors at every stage of policy development, from early planning and stakeholder consultation to implementation and evaluation. It emphasizes an all-actors approach based on extended producer responsibility, encouraging governments, producers, recyclers, and consumers to share responsibility for e-waste management. Through ITU Study Group 5, we also develop international standards that support this vision, promoting eco-design, sustainable supply chains, and circular management of ICT products. We are currently exploring topics such as secondary raw materials, which are materials that are recovered from waste or end-of-life products through recycling, as well as digital product passports for the ICT sector, which will be essential tools to trace materials, enhance transparency, and foster responsible recycling and reuse. I warmly invite all of you to participate in this work, to contribute your expertise, share national experiences, and help shape globally applicable standards that make circularity a reality. For multi-stakeholder collaboration, our collective commitment to these goals is embodied in Green Digital Action, or GDA, an ITU-convened and partner-led initiative launched at COP28, which has translated a shared vision into tangible engagement with 82 countries and over 1,800 organizations, endorsing the Green Digital Action Declaration at COP29. GDA brings together governments, companies, and civil society to ensure that digital transformation and environmental sustainability go hand in hand. I'm pleased to note that the Uganda Communications Commission is actively involved in the GDA, contributing to global dialogue and action on e-waste and circular economy. Your work here today directly supports that shared agenda. As we look ahead to COP30, it is critical to transform dialogue into measurable progress. ITU will continue working with all partners to ensure that digital innovation contributes to global climate goals. In that spirit, I'm also pleased to invite you to the upcoming ITU UNIDO workshop on e-waste in Latin America, from current challenges to future solutions, taking place on 17th October. While this workshop focuses on the Latin American region, it will provide practical guidance and lessons relevant to all countries seeking to strengthen their e-waste management systems. And today, we're also pleased to launch the new e-waste challenge massive open online course, developed with our UN partners and global experts. This MOOC brings together the latest data, best practices, and hands-on tools to help policymakers, businesses, and citizens to take meaningful action on one of the fastest growing waste streams in the world. Finally, here at the ITU headquarters in Geneva, we're marking International E-Waste Day by collecting unused electronics from staff, raising awareness through our internal campaigns, and ensuring responsible recycling through certified partners, demonstrating that every action counts at every level. Dear colleagues, the Uganda ICT e-waste collection pilot shows what is possible when innovation, regulation, and collaboration come together. Let us build on this momentum to scale successful models, to shape effective policies, and to make circularity the norm across the ICT sector. Together, we can ensure that digitalization becomes a true driver of environmental sustainability and climate action for Uganda and for the world. Thank you.
Another round of applause for the ITU Deputy Secretary General. His name is Thomas Lamanauskas. If you have a tongue problem, stop at Thomas. But he's given us very rich insights into this subject matter. And just as he wound up his message, we were joined by the chief guest that we've been hoping would join us, and we are privileged to have the Permanent Secretary, the Minister of ICT and National Guidance, Dr. Amina Zawede. You're very welcome to this session, Madam. She's very committed to this issue. She was with us 2 months ago, and here we are again to discuss very important subject matter. That's how committed she is to it. And of course, as I said earlier, we have top management of UCC represented here as well. We have the Director of Communication Infrastructure, Engineering and Communication Infrastructure, Engineer Alfred Bogere. Yes. We also have James Beronda, who is the Director of the Uganda Communications Universal Service and Access Fund, the Universal Service Fund at UCC. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have a broad range of representation. Madam PS, very, very broad. But I should mention those I didn't mention earlier that have been brought to my attention, who are also in the house this morning. We have the WEEE Center, we have Waste Aid, we have PPE Center, we have Trash to Treasure Network, we have OPM, Office of the Prime Minister, we have Computer for Schools Uganda, we have Mukono District Local Council, We do have REPURPOSE, Uganda Bureau of Statistics, UNBS, URSB, and Uganda Policy. Okay, so at this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Rebecca Mukite. Rebecca Mukite is Head of Communication Infrastructure Services at UCC, and she will basically give us that preliminary report on the preliminary insights that have been accumulated from the last 2 months of the pilot.
Thank you, James. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome for this event, and thank you very much for honoring our invitation. I stand here on behalf of the Director Engineering, Communications Infrastructure, that is Engineer Alfred Bogere, and the members of the project team who are diverse across the Commission. We have learned a lot in this journey, and one of those things is the multidimensional nature of eWaste. So before I start this quick presentation, allow me to request the members of the PIT, which is the project implementation team, to stand up for recognition. They're from different departments. We have research, cybersecurity, IT, UCSAF, engineering, and ladies and gentlemen, the diversity of that list brings to your attention the range of issues that we have learned and continue to learn, and I would like to recognize them and thank them for their contribution. Also amongst us, we have 2 implementing partners who are at that table or station over there. There is Toa Uchafu na Nusu and VAS Consult. Now, these are also an extension of the technical team that we are working with. They're our foot soldiers, not in the political way, but they're the ones who are on the ground and interfacing with a lot of the different models and things we've been trying to see what works and what works better. We'll go into the presentation, but before I do that, today is also International Standards Day, and at UCC, everything we do is guided by international communication standards, because our sector can't be in isolation from the global standards. And this same day where eWaste is commemorated is International Standards Day at the ITU. So we will go into the presentation. I will try to make it fast so that we have some interactive moderated session from the different stakeholders, so that we hear the different dimensions to this issue. So the stats have been shared in so many fora, and there are many different stakeholders who have been collecting this information and sharing it in different publications. But for many of the people who have been involved in eWaste, the stats of the waste that is collected are there, that is generated are there. The waste that is collected, that is another issue. So all these tons of waste that are collected, where are they going? Where are they ending up? ICT eWaste, without preempting the presentation or the keynote that was made by the Deputy Director of ITU, is a subsection of eWaste. Yes, today is International eWaste Day. And in the basket of eWaste, we have fridges, we have flat irons, we have everything that uses an electronic connection. However, ICT eWaste has a uniqueness. It has a higher turnover, and it's growing in factors that are in tonnage. So this is the reason why we set out to do a project that amplifies or brings out the intricacies of ICT e-waste. There is value and there are hazards. Some people talk about it in the context of value. Some people talk about the same waste in the context of hazard. But the separation between whether it's valuable or hazardous sits at disposal and collection. Depending on how it is disposed of, it can either be hazardous or valuable. This is our roadmap, this is our goal, to translate it from being hazardous waste to valuable waste. So, why UCC? There's a lot of other agencies that have a stronger mandate within waste collection. But as UCC, these are the anchors we are leaning on as the regulator of the communication sector. So in everything Uganda Communications Commission does, our first goal is to extend communications to all Ugandans. And in doing this, we are extending the footprint of ICTs all over the country, both on the supply side, that is the infrastructure, and on the demand side, those are the devices and the peripherals. So we are catalyzing the generation of ICT e-waste. And it is our social responsibility as an agency to now see how this waste that we are creating or contributing to the creation of is collected in a structured way. Second reason, the Universal Access Fund. The Universal Access Fund, after the profit-making entities have covered the demand and supply of communication services, the Universal Access Fund steps in to address those gaps that are not catered for by the commercial setup. So you find that there are people who, for some reason or another, cannot access or cannot use communication services. And the Universal Access Fund has a lot of initiatives that are catering to those unserved or underserved brackets. And in catering to those brackets, some of the initiatives they are doing involve distribution of communication equipment and services and products and gadgets, computers, tablets, solar panels, and extending network services. So those initiatives are designed to extend these services to the unserved. But it's still social responsibility for the fund to now curate the end-of-life management of what it is they're distributing, because it has been in force since 2013. I hope I got the year right. And you can imagine they've been distributing computers in thousands, countrywide. But we all know that the life cycle of a computer is not 10 years. We know that there are schools that have labs that have 40 computers, and out of the 40, 13 are working, 27 are not working. Where are they going? What's happening to them? And this is a national footprint. Now, on top of the computers, they are distributing tablets to the country's low-income households to see how those tablets can translate the value, quality of life. What happens after 4 years of that tablet? These tablets are powered by solar panels. Where are they ending up? So that is our second why. Our third why is SIMO-Clear. We launched a SIMO-Clear system last week, but this project or campaign has been going on for over 5 years. This campaign fights poor standard or low quality devices, fake devices, and one of the attributes of those is a short lifespan. That fake phone doesn't last for a year. But with that high turnover, where are they going? Or after you do an enforcement and you find that someone has a batch of fake phones, where do you point them to safely dispose of them? Fourth one, minimum quality specs. This is one of the things we do as a technical department. We set standards for devices to handhold the market. So when we put up minimum quality specs for televisions, when these people go to import, that is, it becomes the benchmark of the minimum quality. But then there are those which are already on market, which don't meet that quality. So after they've gone through that cycle of entry, how are we managing their safe disposal? Because they're already on the market. Type approval is one of the processes we undertake, still under the engineering department, still to manage quality of communications equipment and devices that come in. However, those that trickle in and manage to bypass this project, we know their characteristics. They don't last, they don't perform to standard, but what happens to them after they're spoiled? And last but not least, consumer protection. At the end of the day, our market is only viable when there are consumers who are alive to use communication services. But if you recall in the previous slide, ICT e-waste can either be hazardous or valuable. But should it end up in the normal waste stream, on landfills, in our gardens, in our water, it's going to affect the quality of life and health of the consumers. So these are our key pillars on the why, and I believe they're strong why UCC is doing this. So this, at the launch, started as a pilot project. Why a pilot? No one is collecting e-waste in developing countries, so no one has clear information on how it's done, how it's modeled. So we believe that starting with a pilot would be a good test run to see what works, what different things we can do, how we can even convince people to let go of this waste, because it is seated in our drawers, in our homes. It will probably never work again, but you still want to see it there because you spent some money on it. So anyway, first it was a pilot, and the pilot was scoped for Central Region, that was Kampala, please ignore that F, Kampala, Wakiso, and Mukono, for really commercial reasons, because that is the business center or heartbeat of the country. People come from up country to come and buy TVs during Christmas, or phones, or what. So Kampala, Wakiso, and Mukono would give us a model that we can replicate in other areas that might not be in the same commercial bracket, but that's where we started from. And the duration at that time was 35 weeks. There is a 3 missing before that 5. 35 weeks, 11 weeks were for us to set up, and 14 weeks were for implementation and engagement. Now, that separation between the setup and implementation, we've discovered that e-waste is so diverse. The issues related to e-waste are so diverse. We've had to increase our stakeholder list to bring on board so many different stakeholders, and I thank you all for honoring our invitation. But the 11 weeks of setup were really engagements to tell different entities that this is what we want to do. This is what we think we're going to do. Will it work? In your technical opinion, we onboarded NEMA, we onboarded KCCA, we onboarded Luero Industries, the Ministry of ICTs. There were really many agencies that we had engagements with, and they gave us good ideas on how we can frame this in a way that actually works. And those were the 11 weeks. And the past 14 weeks, we've worked with the implementing partners to model a couple of these ideas we got, or curate some of the challenges we've learned on the go, and they're coming up in the presentation. So, you've heard me talk about implementing partners and the stakeholders. I apologize for the wordy slide. So I'll start with the implementing partners. We have 2 implementing partners, Toa Uchafu na Nusu and Value Added Services Limited, or VAS Logistics. Now, these 2 entities were selected through a competitive process. There was a public call for expression of interest. And out of that public call, we got 17 entries of people who are doing a lot of wonderful things in eWest. We had a selection committee that included the PIT members I introduced, and it also had representation from the lead agencies, that is NEMA, to give us insights and align us to the waste collection structure. We had KCCA, we had Luweero Industries in the selection process for the two agencies. Now, these agencies went through two levels of evaluation. First, we had a public call, then there was a preliminary selection, but then we had a second evaluation which was actually a pitching process. Why pitching? This project is targeting collection. We believe that once we understand the intricacies of collection, the rest of what happens after collection will be addressed, whether it's to bring on board people who recycle, who refurbish. If we don't have our stats and numbers and process on collection, these other things can't spin off. So we needed them to tell us, what are your ideas on collection? And that is the core requirement on Toa Uchafu na Nusu and VAS Consults. Maybe to profile them again a bit, Toa Uchafu na Nusu, their collection model and ideas were addressing Omuntu wa Wansi, the communities, the market people, the community drives, the slum areas, and all those people where these are the people who are more inclined to get maybe lower quality. I hope that doesn't really sound bad, but cheaper devices, a higher turnover of e-waste, and we felt that these people needed to have a model that meets their level of engagement, and that is what Toa Uchafu na Nusu has been doing and curating. VAS Consults. VAS Consults brings on board the more affluent and formal communities, the entities, the people who can use smartphones. They have barcoded bins and barcoded reward processes, whereas our people in the informal sector, their requirements are simpler, and the explanations and the tone is also different. So those are the two implementing partners we're working with. The second list on this slide is for the different agencies that have come on board that we have managed to onboard through this process. I've mentioned the lead agencies. There's KCCA, there's NEMA, there's UBOS, there's USB, there's Luweero Industries, and they all have a mandate or a unique mandate in waste collection. We have, however, also managed to onboard our operators, and I really want to thank them for coming on board and seeing how to plug themselves in this project, which is really of a national cause. So, the objectives. The other slide, the previous slide, was talking about the why of why UCC undertook this. This slide is talking about the objectives. The first thing is a scalable, safe, and transparent model for collecting. Everything you've heard about e-waste, yes, it's there, but our emphasis now is on collection, because there's been a lot of studies, a lot of spin-off actions, but what has not yet been addressed in developing countries is collection. So if we can find or curate scalable models, replicable collection models, that will be our first win. 2, we are looking at where to point people to who have ICT e-waste, because we know the problem. And people keep telling us, oh, we had these modems, they are now outdated. You have 2G phones, which are now outdated. You have transition to DTT, there are STBs and TVs. Where do we put them? So, where to put the devices was our second objective. 3, to make or create a traceable system, because e-waste has perceived value. I'm very sure you all have that drawer, you have that 3310, it has not worked, it doesn't have a charger, it is never going to work. But for some reason, someone believes that maybe it has some value. So, because it has value, creating that trust that when you dispose of it, someone else is not going to get it and create value out of it was also something we've learned on the go, because people keep thinking that maybe someone else will find value in it. The fourth objective was to build partnerships. This is really a huge, huge project. And I'm happy to see that there's a NPA in the room and a lot of other funding partners, because the scope of this project is beyond what UCC can do just as one agency. It has to be collaborative. We have to do something and other people come and plug in for us to really take this off at a national level. Number 5 was to raise awareness. People have questions. People have unclear information about ICT eWaste. And that decision on whether to dispose safely or not is hinged on how well we create awareness. And that awareness is not just for the people in this room, it's for the people who are upcountry, it's for the students, for us to create a curriculum that helps them learn from the get-go that e-waste has to be separated from other waste streams. That if it's not separated, it can be hazardous. It can have value. It can have commercial benefit. But that awareness has to be structured and packaged for different audiences in order for us to create behavioral change. Last but not least, to explore livelihood, circular economic opportunities in e-waste management. One of the things we've learned on the go is the wastepreneurs. People can actually make a commercial sense out of e-waste collection. But even as they're making that commercial sense, they need to be able to do it safely without exposing themselves, without exposing the communities, and also they have to be handheld and structured, that after they extract value from these circuit boards, from whatever it is they're collecting, what do they do with the remaining parts? How do they dispose of them? They've been burning them in downtown markets and what? We've been finding people heaping them on fire and burning. But imagine the extent of pollution in those fumes, because these circuit boards have mercury, they have cadmium, they have zinc, and all manner of metal, but up in flames. So we envision that if we do this well, we can also create a structure out of that informal sector. So we're moving on to our progress and preliminary findings. This is what we've done so far. One of the things we started with, which was very important, I'm sorry the slide is a bit wordy, but we shall bullet it in our engagement. So the first thing was the bins, because like you see, e-waste is different from other waste streams. When you eat a banana, when you throw away the peel, you're settled that the banana is out of the peel, so you throw it away. But even when people take their gadgets to repairmen, they want to live with the old screen that got broken, because they still believe that maybe the children will play with it, or I can put it somewhere, but it really has no value. So the bin had to speak to the other objectives of the project. One, we're trying to create awareness or courage for the public to dispose. So the public has to see, or the bin has to be transparent. And that's the first thing. We have a model bin over there. The bin had to be transparent. That was the first thing. So that people can see that, okay, I'm seeing some old modems in there. I can also unplug mine and bring it. It had to be transparent. 2, the bin had to be made of a material that can collect, maintain the value without the waste being exposed to heat or water or losing its value after collection. So the material is glass, but glass that doesn't break. It has aspects of heat resistance, it's movable, and that design, we really played around with a number of models, and right now we are sharing it as a contribution to ITU of how an e-waste bin can look like in order to push for behavioral change, but also to ensure that the waste is safe. The second issue was placement of the bins, perceived value. Even when a charger, a cable, you know this cable is not working. Someone, because they have this, someone will pick it, go figure out it's not working, but still hold on to it and linger out with it and be there with a cable that's not working. So we needed to place or profile places that can meet public access, reach, but also have security. So that's where a lot of our partners have come on board and allowed us graciously to place our bins, but also to complement our collection support structure. What do I mean? That the security guard at that service center should be able to wheel the bin out, should be able to ensure that no one can tamper with it, and should be able to wheel it back in at the end of the day. Otherwise, if it's left out, it will be scavenged. So first, we designed the bins. Then we had to profile areas that the public can access, but have security and can create a structure of safety of the waste that is collected. The slide talks about the transparent design, the bin locations, and I am glad to report that so far we have 17 bin locations, and that is before our operators place bins at the service centers. We've shared with them the standards of how the bin should look and the dimensions and all these other profiles, and I am glad to announce that we already have both MTN and Airtel on board who have allowed or agreed are working towards placing bins at the service centers. Bin location has to speak to the kind of waste that is being collected, because when my phone is not working, I go to the service center. When I have an issue, the service centers have repair areas. The service centers curate a lot of things related to the sector. So we felt that placing bins in an area whereby people relate to the sector would also encourage safe disposal. And I would like to thank all the partners, including Banana, who is a leading device vendor in town, who has graciously already placed all bins at their access points, and these are high traffic areas. We are still brokering the local government offices. I think they call it Gombolola. Yeah, the Gombolola offices in the different divisions. All our regional offices as UCC are going to have e-waste bins, and we are getting more partners on board to see that we can at least place the bins and point people to those areas. So, what is coming in so far in the bins? We have received all manner of things in the bins. We've collected phones, we've collected motherboards, we've collected radios, we've collected set-top boxes, and other accessories. We have not yet collected any TV sets, so I'm wondering, where are the TVs? Where are those big stomach TVs? They're still in your homes, in your parents' homes, with a katambala on the top, eh? But that TV probably doesn't have the connectors. You now watch HD TV, so even if you can't even connect an HDMI cable on it, so ladies and gentlemen, where are those TVs? We've not collected any TVs. We know they're there. Because they'll break, we don't know what is inside that CRT, or whether over time it decomposes and emits radiation. So please bring them over, encourage your people to bring them over, place them at any bin location. These are going to be publicized, and let us safely collect them. Replace them with a TV set that can actually watch the HD TV you're enjoying now. Because even if it was big or small, that TV now can't work for you. You can't enjoy your viewing experience with it. Let go. That 3310, the chargers are not being made anymore. Right now, I see all devices are coming with a Type-C. So when you have a device that has the old charger, should you lose that charger, you're stuck with it. Dispose of that waste. Safely dispose of it. So that is what we've collected so far. We've collected some radios, and we're also starting a DAB pilot. No, not a pilot, a real DAB project now. The pilot has ended. So even those analog radios are going to become obsolete. And we need to have where to point people to dispose of them safely. I've talked about what has come in, what has not come in. Even the phones, we are seeing very few phones, but we have very little trust in what is on the phones. I think really the Lord should, on top of searching our hearts, should also search our phones. Because people do not want to dispose of old phones. You find someone has upgraded and upgraded and upgraded, but they're still keeping those phones in drawers. And one of the things we discovered was the data on the phones. For some people, phones have valuable, memorable data. For the other people, phones have our information. It might not be data, it might be information. And again, because we are still working on the trust issue, you imagine that after you dispose of it, someone is going to come and pick it up and scan through what's on the phone. I'd like to rest your fear. We do have and have worked with the SAT team to develop a data sanitization protocol. Why am I calling it a protocol? That one, there are do-it-yourself aspects whereby you can sanitize your device yourself and get rid of the data, or we have a data sanitizer. During the break or at the end, you'll have a chance to go and see how it works. We have a data sanitizer that can actually delete all the content of your hard drive. And we believe that when we publicize this and more, that people will get courage, okay, to let go of the phones. Because I imagine if we just collected from this room alone, we should have a small bin full of old phones which have been sanitized. Data is one of the issues that we've highlighted, not just at individual, but also at institutional level. E-waste is not only in homes, it's also in our offices, in our agencies, in our businesses, and that waste still, a lot of agencies have data protection fears. But we have created a structured protocol that you can work with us as, when it comes to agencies, it's Uganda Communications Commission itself, because we're within the purview of the Data Protection Act, and we are bound to ensure that the data is well handled, and we can hand it over to you, but dispose of the gadgets on which it sits. Because those gadgets, if they're not disposed of safely, even when you keep them, the stores are full, at one point they'll end up in the main waste stream. I've talked about the individuals and the agencies and the data sanitization aspect, and that has been one of the key drivers or the inhibitant for people and agencies to dispose. This we have really discussed in a way from the beginning of the presentation. There is perceived value. That is one of the learnings we have. Someone they've bought for them a phone when they're still in high school, and now they've outgrown its functions, they're moving on to something else, but still, they keep it for sentimental reasons. And the more you keep it, after some time, the buttons are chipping off, the plastic is cracking, the circuit board is shaking out. At the end of that cycle, it's going to end up in the natural waste stream, and that's what we're trying to fight. So we're hoping that the perceived value and emotional attachment are some of the things we can encourage people to let go of. Data security, we've addressed that. We've come up with a protocol where you can do it yourself, or a process you can go through for us to sanitize your waste, your storable devices, and we safely dispose after we have confirmed that it has been sanitized. Now, aside from sanitization, some people have data that they need to keep, photos, I don't know, music. I don't know what people keep on the phones, but we have also created a transfer protocol. I'm calling them protocols because they are all structured. That when you have a PC, a CPU that you're stuck with in your store, but you know it has some data, some documents, some photos, some music, some movies, that data can be transferred to a drive, okay? And then the computer is sanitized and disposed of. Because that CPU is taking up space in your house, but you're never going to use it again. I'll keep saying that. Seeing it there is one thing, but you're never actually going to power it because the CPUs that are coming out now don't even, the monitors don't even connect to those old CPUs. They're using HDMI. The new ones don't even have a CPU. The monitor is the CPU. So please get rid of them if they have content that needs to be disposed. The areas of curating that data have been created, and we're going to start pointing the public to those places. So there's a policy dimension to some of our learnings, and during our engagements with different entities, we found that public institutions have a lot of e-waste. But the same public institutions are bound by the provisions of PPDA for disposal. So we find that we are now inclined to work with PPDA to create a structure of disposal of gadgets, ICTs, that are procured through a public procurement process. Because what happens, two of the agencies we had meetings with, when these things leave offices, they are put in a container somewhere and kept there to wait for the public disposal process. But even the things which are in the container, when we scanned, there's a monitor, it is broken in the middle, the keyboard has 6 buttons missing, and really when you look at some of these things, even after they've gone through the repair, reuse, repurpose cycle, there's still going to be a lot of waste that is generated, and once we lose visibility of them before they get back into a commercial cycle, that's how they're going to end up in our normal waste streams. So the issue for public agencies and how we can create or align collection to the provisions of the disposal provisions of the PPDA is one of the key learnings that we are now going to follow through or track, so that we create a structured way in which gadgets that have been procured through a procurement process, a government procurement process, can also be disposed of, but the e-waste should be able to be separated at that point, so that you're not auctioning off monitors which are never going to work. Or if you're auctioning them off, at least auction them off in reusable parts, so that there's a separation before disposal. Instead of selling everything or disposing of everything, at least there's some sorting, some dismantling, some separation between what is waste, what is reusable, what is repairable. And all those are different streams. So we believe that that is one of the key areas we need to track and create a structured process for. Awareness and engagement. E-waste has, we've really tried different models of public awareness, And one of the key things that has come up is that we need, I'm calling it a curriculum, but really it's a model. That how you talk to older people, this room doesn't have any old people, how you talk to old people to encourage them to dispose of that TV that is covered with a katambala is not the same way you talk to a Gen Z who's moving from iPhone 13 to iPhone 16. Or that repair person up country and the repair person at a service center, how you engage them, all those are different information requirements. So one of the things that we've worked with implementing partners is to curate different curriculums for different audiences. And part of our key audiences, by the ones who are doing community drives, are for the informal sector, separate audiences for the market team, for people who are handling waste collection, the collectors of waste from different homes. We've trained them on how to separate, why they need to separate, how they can protect themselves, but most importantly, what is in need for them, because that becomes the actual motivator. We've done some radio talk shows. We've done some community activations. We are creating a campaign specifically for schools and universities, because we believe that this is something that can be embedded at curriculum level. And when you, the parent, don't have the courage, the children can get the courage to identify the e-waste in their homes if we teach them where to dispose of it and how to dispose of it. So that is something that is within our purview, and in collaboration with UCSAF and all the other education sector related programs that UCC is running, to create a specific track for e-waste. Traceability and digital tools. So we've talked about the fact that people imagine that if I've had this iPod, the first little iPods that had a pin, and I dispose of it, someone is going to pick it up and maybe use it. There is keen interest in traceability. People want to know, where is it going? What is happening? What happens next? And that is part of the process that we've seen creates value and trust for people to dispose. So the bins have a QR code. All those bins have one-way entry, but you can't extract. The only people who can extract are the designated collectors, and that is Luero Industries Limited. So even the implementing partners, after they collect, they cannot extract. But also, because we are very keen on collecting stats, e-waste is measured in tonnage. We want to be able to measure how much we've collected at what bin. So these bins, all the bins have barcodes to help us capture how the weight is transitioning, and also to log the waste that is coming in as it comes in. So for the affluent disposers, there's an app that you can download. You can log what you have disposed of. Of course, we deal with human error in some aspects, but we are creating a watertight process to ensure that when you dispose of the waste, it is going to where it has to go, and there are no leakages back into the community. We also have forms and a system that is going to track what is disposed and what is logged at Luero Industries, who is our designated collector at this point. This information will create the data we need to understand the volumes, the kind of waste we are collecting, how it's being handled, what aspects are reusable, what is waste, what can be refurbished. And ladies and gentlemen, that information is the information people who need to invest in recycling need to know whether we have a viable market for that investment. But right now, even if an entity wanted to come and set up a recycling plant, We don't have any data of how much we are collecting, what is disposed of, why is it being disposed of, people upgrading, phones going through 3 family members before they reach end of life. We don't have any of that information, and we need that information to decide what happens. I've talked about data sanitization. I need to talk about wastepreneurs, because we believe that for the project to be viable, it has to make commercial sense. There are a lot of people who collect plastics, who collect different forms of waste, but even e-waste, ICT e-waste has an informal collection cycle. And one of the things we've set out is, one, to track them, to work with them, to sensitize them, first of all, to protect themselves and protect the community, but also to create a track that we can follow through, to standardize their business and work with them to see what happens at the end of that cycle of collection. Who are they selling to? How are they selling? How are they quantifying? And that track is also, has been a spin-off of the project. It wasn't initially in our objectives, but it has actually come up as a very viable track, because the biggest volume of collection that we've had has come from the wastepreneurs. These are some of the items they make, but they are also making and collecting a lot of other things that they're selling in different components, but they're also now working, or are going to be structured, to see what happens to what they collect, who are they selling to, what is the waste that comes from what is not taken, and how is it managed. I think I've already shared the emerging insights, the behavioral aspects, the institutional concerns, the operational, the repair shops. That is another stream of stakeholders that we are creating a separate structure for, because every time your phone is not working, or your TV, or your set-top box, when you take it to a repairman, whatever they take out, where do they put it? What happens? Are you going back home with it? What is it that is happening to the waste that is coming out of the repairable cycle? I believe I've already shared a lot of our learnings, and out of the learnings we've done for this particular project at the pilot phase, which was Kampala, Mukono, and Wakiso, we now believe that we have a mapping of what has worked where, what can be replicable, what can work in schools and communities, what can work for institutions. And I believe that we are going to, or we are ready to report on collection, the general framework of collection. Thank you very much.
Let's put our hands together for Rebecca, Head of Communication Infrastructure at UCC. She had quite a difficult job to do, but she was more than up to the task. She's given us a broad overview of what the last 2 months have been like. A lot of takeaways, which I won't go into, but I will comment about the issue of the phone, how close we are to our phones, and how difficult it is to just throw it away, even if it's not working anymore. I have seen people, by the way, there is a bin right here, and I can see it's already taken in some items. So those who came ready to do away with their gadgets, the bin is right here. And it's been properly designed in such a way that when you've dropped it, you can't take it out. I have seen people negotiating with themselves, between themselves, and taking it in slow motion until you gain the courage to let it go. And when it has gone, you can't take it back. See, people, something in them is like, okay, till we meet again. And the phone goes. But that's how important these gadgets are to us. But as we've been ably enlightened, some of them are not really helpful to us. And if it's about the data, it can be extracted or destroyed for our own comfort. But it's not easy, it's a learning process. And that's why we have these engagements and this pilot project. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I would like to invite the Acting Executive Director, UCC, and that is Susan Wegoye Atengo, who is substantively Commission Secretary at UCC or Director Legal. You're very welcome, Madam. A round of applause for Susan.
Our guest of honor, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, Dr. Amina Zawede, ministries, departments, and agencies of government, members of management of the UCC, members of the project implementation team, our operators, academia, other partners present, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, you're all welcome to today's event. On a light note, I always thought that it was the lawyers who had a problem with tallying things. But I was trying to follow back here. 11 plus 14, I tried to make it 34. But that's really on a light note. Allow me to bring you greetings from the Executive Director of the Uganda Communications Commission, who has not been able to join us today. And also allow me to present his remarks for today. We meet today in alignment with the International E-Waste Day 2025, a global reminder that collection is the very first step in responsible e-waste management. Everything else, reuse, recycling, refurbishing, recovery, begins there. Today is not just another meeting. It's an opportunity for us to dialogue, to listen, to share, and agree on how we move together into phase 2 of our ICT e-waste collection project. As we noted when we launched this project 2 months ago, Uganda is generating more e-waste than it is collecting or safely disposing of. This has serious implications, not only for our environment and economy, but also for human health and safety. ICT e-waste contains toxic substances, such as lead, mercury, which are potentially harmful to human health, and if improperly disposed of through burning, dumping, or unsafe dismantling. Such substances can also pollute the environment, contaminating soil, air, and water, with long-term effects on food security and ecosystems. The Uganda Communications Commission sits right at the center of the ICT device life cycle, from approval to active use to end of life. And our role, as outlined in Uganda's e-waste policy, is to make sure the process is safe, traceable, and transparent. That means clear collection practices, data protection, and reliable sector reporting. Our work as UCC goes beyond licensing and regulation. It is about ensuring that ICT growth aligns with our national goals for environmental protection, public health, and responsible technology use. With the recent launch of the Central Equipment Identity Register, the CIR, or CIMU Clear System as it's commonly known, more non-compliant or blocked devices will find their way into the end-of-life stream. Our shared task is to make sure those handsets don't end up in drawers, landfills, or informal markets, but in safe, transparent collection channels that protect both people and the environment. Where programs implemented by the Uganda Communications Commission, Universal Service and Access Fund, the UCSAF, distributes ICT devices, we also have a duty to plan for their end of life by connecting schools and communities to official collection points and helping them to dispose of responsibly. The goal is to establish a nationally replicable framework for e-waste collection that is aligned with Uganda's e-waste policy and the circular economy objectives, whereby discarded devices are not simply thrown away, but are recovered, repaired, or recycled. Beyond collection, the project is about building a long-term ecosystem for responsible e-waste management, where public awareness, regulatory alignment, data security, and environmental protection come together to support a cleaner and more sustainable digital future for Uganda. Let's remember, proper e-waste management is not just good for the environment, it's good for everyone. It's good for consumers who deserve data security and safer homes. It's good for businesses which earn trust and compliance, and it's good for Uganda through better health, cleaner surroundings, and greener jobs. That is why we are rallying the entire e-waste regulatory ecosystem of operators, recyclers, repairers, and innovators to treat the end of the ICT equipment not as an afterthought, but as part of how the sector works every single day. Easy to use collection channels build public confidence and unlock new value in the circular economy. That's why we've partnered to set up official drop-off points across the pilot districts. Our call to all of us is simple. Don't keep dead devices at home or in the office. Use these points. The pilot will show us what works, where to expand, and how to scale nationally. As I conclude, allow me to express our sincere appreciation to the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance for its steadfast policy leadership. We at the Commission would particularly wish to thank the Permanent Secretary for her continued commitment to this initiative, demonstrated by her presence at the launch just 2 months ago, and again she's here with us today. Thank you, Madam PS. We also acknowledge the invaluable support of the National Steering Committee on E-Waste Management, as well as our partners, NEMA, KCCA, and Luero Industries, whose collaboration has been very instrumental in advancing this cause. To make today's dialogue impactful, I invite each one of you to engage actively, bring your ideas, your expertise, and your commitment. Together, we can make e-waste management a normal part of Uganda's digital future. I thank you for God and my country.
Another round of applause for the acting ED. Thank you so much. So far, it's been a one-sided conversation, if I should say. It's been a kind of a monologue. UCC speaking, plus the ITU, of course. Now it's time to get feedback from our partners. As it has been ably demonstrated, this is something that affects a whole range of sectors, and the representation here is more than evidence of that. And therefore, the conversation that we have here must reflect that very fact. And so we do have this opportunity now to engage, to hear different perspectives and takes on this matter from the other partners that have been involved in this work. There will be a few people have been lined up to lead in that regard. I will mention them shortly. And after that, then there will also be space for some contributions from the audience. The speakers lined up really to make brief remarks. To go first, Patrick Mundua, who is the National Steering Committee. It's at Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. And Patrick will be followed by James Mohindo, he's from NEMA, the National Environment Management Authority. And that will be followed by the remarks of Mikhail, I have to labor with this one, Mikhail Banchuk, World Bank. Yes, and that will be followed by remarks of a representative from UBOS, Uganda Bureau of Statistics. So let's follow that order, make our remarks as brief as we possibly can, and then listen to one another and hear from as many of you, of our stakeholders as possible. And to take you back to our program, that then will be followed by the remarks of our guest of honor, which will bring us towards the end of the function of this morning's engagement. But I'm told that the very, very climax is lunch. So, yes. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, I'll hand over the microphone to Patrick Mundua. Kind of step forward or make your remarks. Thank you. Round of applause for Patrick.
Thank you. Members, good morning. I would want to appreciate UCC and the different partners who have put this event together today. It's a very good monumental event. Now, technology. We love technology. Technology has become part of us. And with all our beautiful devices, we have our smartphones, which we never put down. We hold them even when we are walking, we walk with our phones. We have our lovely laptops, whereby even when you're at home with your family, you're on your laptops. We have a lot of these wonderful devices that we normally use. And we have become very dependent on these devices. And as we move with these devices, we always want to get the next new thing. The new iPhone 17 Pro has come. You have iPhone 15, you think, I should move on. So we are now accustomed to a quick, every 2 years, a cycle of changing devices. But we often don't look at the long-term effect of this. We have about, I believe, over close to 20 million mobile subscriptions in Uganda. That is, I'm trying to keep for one of the service providers. Many of us have 2 devices. Now try and imagine over the years, if everybody kept a phone for 2 years or 3 years, the sheer numbers that have to be disposed every year. So we are now in a world where we have a lot of e-waste, a lot of electronic waste. And we normally say that these devices, just like human beings, at one moment, they will retire. And when they retire, how do we give them a decent retirement? And we are glad that today we are trying to see how we move to ensure that we have a decent retirement for all these devices. Another very important one that I normally want to emphasize, which probably is the biggest, or among the biggest e-wastes in Uganda, are removable batteries. The one we keep in our radios, in our remote. And these days we are buying many of them which are low quality, which are going to last you 1 month, 2 months. These are massive amounts of e-waste. So the steering committee, and on the behalf of the National Steering Committee, we're here to make sure that these heroes of technology that have served us are properly retired. And we are working together with all our major partners, UCC, NEMA, KCCA, URA, which tracks a lot of the information of the items coming into the country, but also Uganda National Bureau of Standards, which is instrumental in ensuring that the electronics that come into our country have some basic minimum levels of quality. So in 2025, we are moving towards going beyond policies. We have nice policies. They say in Uganda we have the best policies. The problem is implementation. And we want to move from the policy to implementing. And these are some of the pioneering implementations that we have, where we can actually put in our e-waste and have these centers across the country. We want to focus on the catchwords that we have seen there: recycle, reuse, repurpose. And want to make sure that we move that message across the whole country. And to move that message using all levels of communication: radios, televisions, word of mouth, communication with through the different channels. And we have a few things that we want to emphasize, about 5 of them that I'm going to mention. Number 1 has been emphasized: public awareness. The public has to be well aware that e-waste, when they get a battery, the old remote battery, they don't just throw it. They properly have mechanisms to dispose, and they're aware of the dangers and the health hazards through community sensitizations. Number 2 is, and what we are trying to push, are e-waste collection centers. And I would like to implore our partners that we need to see how we can move out of Kampala, out of Greater Kampala, to parts of the regional cities, as an example, to move that agenda of disposal centers. Number 3 that has been mentioned, we need to bring in the culture of waste management to our youth when they are still young, so that they don't grow up spoiled like us, who throw things anywhere. We sensitize, we build that culture right from the time when they are young. Number 4, partnerships with private sector. I was meeting with one of our colleagues from, is it Banana? And you're telling us how the banana company, how they are helping, they sell mobile devices, but they help to also dispose of them. So working with the public-private partnership, it was mentioned about the circular economy. That the same way we have a circular economy for water drinking plastic bottles, it has now been effectively all over. You go across Kampala, even up country, they are collecting, recycling those bottles. We can have, with the private sector, a circular economy for other aspects of e-waste. And lastly, we need to strengthen enforcement mechanisms by working with NEMA to make sure that people don't dispose old radios in our wetlands or in our drainage lines. Working with URA, working with Uganda National Bureau of Standards, and with local governments. So as I conclude, let's make responsible e-waste management a national habit, a national culture. Not just a policy, but a habit which we ingrain in our young and in ourselves. And to make sure that as we push for digital transformation, the digital transformation must be innovative, but it should also be responsible and sustainable. And that is why the tools we use for digital transformation must be properly disposed. On behalf of the committee, we hereby reaffirm our commitment to safe, sustainable, and inclusive management of electronic waste. Lastly, I would like to thank our partners, again, UCC, international partners, and all of us for sparing the time to make sure that today we push our agenda for a clean digital economy where all the advantages of the digital economy are achieved, but the dangers like e-waste are responsibly managed. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Let's put our hands together for Patrick once again. As James Muhindo of NEMA makes his way here, I would like to recognize the presence of, among others that have been mentioned already, Uganda Investment Authority, International Organization of Migration, and NETA. NETA is the National Entrepreneurs and Traders Association, Seyatini, and last but not least, we do have also in our midst the Golden Posts, our social media army, young army. So, over to you, NEMA.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I know we've been seated for a while. I will request, with permission from the chief guest, to ask all of us to stand for maybe 3 seconds and stretch. Yeah, if we may, let's stand and stretch and shake a hand and greet a neighbor, and then we sit. Yeah. Yes, we can take our seats. Thank you. My name is James Muhindo. I work with NEMA as a senior legal officer. And the 7 to 10 minutes I'm going to use to present to present 10 slides that relate to the national environment, in brackets, extended producer responsibility and product stewardship for electrical and electronic equipment regulations. These regulations have been, are still being drafted, and as you may be aware, I think the ED mentioned it, lawyers just focus on English, but the science, the engineering, the technical aspects are given to us by our colleagues, and I have 4 of my colleagues. If you could stand for recognition. Colleagues from NEMA, thank you very much. We can give them an applause. Yes, so the presentation, I briefly explain how NEMA comes into this conversation and our functions, the role of lead agencies, and the institutions that are involved in management of the environment. Then I define about 9 key terms from the regulation, and the rest I just share with us an outline of the contents of the regulation. Yes, Section 9 of the National Environment Act provides that NEMA is the principal agency mandated with regulating, monitoring, supervision, and coordination of all matters relating to the environment in Uganda. So, unlike lead agencies, as you're going to see in the following slides, NEMA regulates, monitors, coordinates, and supervises what the primary mandate holders are doing in respect to the environment. And our functions, honing into why we are here this morning, the functions of NEMA are so many provided in Section 9.2 of the Act, but more importantly include that bullet that is highlighted, which is to regulate, monitor, and coordinate private sector, NGOs, so on issues relating to the environment. So e-waste and the private players involved, beyond NEMA coordinating government agencies or regulating and supervising government agencies, we also have mandate to regulate and coordinate private players in different aspects of the environment. Good. Next, for some reason the next slide, if someone could help, the pointer is not working. We have Section 11 of the Act. This provides for lead agencies. Lead agencies are either government ministries, departments, or agencies who are mandated with management of a specific aspect or segment of the environment. And the list of lead agencies is very long. It includes ministries. For example, the Ministry of Water has certain departments that are responsible for certain aspects of the environment. The ministry, NFA is in charge of forests. Uganda Wildlife Authority is in charge of wildlife, and so on. But at the bottom of the slide, we have local governments. Local governments and urban authorities are the lead agencies mandated with the primary responsibility of managing waste. So NEMA comes in to regulate, and for those of you who followed the incident regarding waste about 4 or 5 months ago, it's eventually the local government, which is KCCA in that case, that was held primarily responsible for the incident. That is because they are lead agencies charged with management of waste, and then NEMA supervises at a higher level. So more specifically to what we came to discuss today, extended producer responsibility. The regulation we are coming up with speaks to what has been discussed since morning, which is the management of e-waste. And globally, the practice of extended producer responsibility has taken trend, and this relates to having a producer to take responsibility for the entire life cycle of their product. If you produce a laptop, your responsibility in relation to that laptop doesn't end when it leaves the factory, or when you give it to a distributor, or when a consumer buys it. The responsibility for it has to continue until the waste from that product is managed properly. And by using this, the producers who profit, who are the primary gainers of profit from a product, have to finance or facilitate the collection of that waste, or when that product eventually becomes waste. So the slides will be shared, but the regulation defines certain key terms, terms like electrical and electronic equipment, which means products or components that are electrical or electronic, but also includes batteries. It includes other equipment for generating, transmitting, distributing, and measuring current beyond just the e-equipment. Then, extended producer responsibility scheme, which means a system which is established to manage extended producer responsibility. Then, electronic or electric waste, which means the product, once it has reached end of life, that what was an e-equipment becomes e-waste. Others, best available technology, collection service fee, deposit refund scheme. This one is one of the measures that will be taken where for certain products, when you take them, you deposit certain money. When you return the waste at the end of life, you get that money back. We've had, and I think the colleagues from UCC didn't mention it, but through our drafting and consultations, one of the things that came out include solar products, where there are reports of solar radios, solar torches, and other solar-related equipment that almost work for maybe a month, and after a month they can no longer work, meaning someone has to keep disposing them off. They are so cheap on the market. So for such products, schemes like this can be improvised where you have to leave a certain amount at the retailer. When you return the waste, you get that amount. There are other techniques such as deposit refund. We have other suggestions in the regulation which include buyback, where the vendor eventually buys the waste when the product has reached end of life. Who is a producer for purpose of the regulation? It means a person, any person or category of persons, including a brand owner, distributor, who is engaged in the manufacture, conversion, refurbishment, where applicable, or importation of for commercial purposes, new or used identified electrical or electronic equipment as listed in the schedule to the document. Why it's important for a producer to be defined, they are the ones who eventually take responsibility to contribute or to make a financial contribution to the collection of the waste. Then producer responsibility organization, the regulation provides that these producers of different electronic waste streams will have to form organizations so that they use the organizations to collect the waste, as opposed to each producer having to collect their own waste. This is very handy in terms of regulation. While it may be easy to, for one to think each brand, we shall go around monitoring each brand to make sure they've collected their waste. When we use PROs, the PRO does the collection on behalf of its members who have paid the money required for collecting waste. And then product steward, which means a person or agent of such a person responsible for importation. The steward is the one who is an agent of a producer. So, what do I have next? Yes, so the outline of the regulation. The title is the National Environment Extended Producer Responsibility and Product Steward for Electrical and Electronic Equipment Regulation. Our ambitious target is to have this concluded in 2025, but that could change if the process takes longer. We provide for interpretation, which has much more terms than what I have explained. And then the purpose of this regulation is largely to provide for the responsibility of producers to take charge or to be accountable for the entire life cycle of their products up to end of life. And the regulation 4 provides for the application of the regulation. Other items covered in the regulation, the detail will be shared. Part 2 provides for extended producer responsibility. The products covered under these regulations, we provide a schedule which has a long list of electronic equipment in Schedule 2, which are covered under the regulation. Then the responsibility of the producer, this is largely for them to be members of the Producer Responsibility Organization, but also to provide a fee that the PRO determines, so that annually they can provide this fee to the Producer Responsibility Organization to do the collection. And I know with the project that UCC is implementing, the funding may be government of Uganda or donor support, but for sustainability, we need to have the producers who are generating these products that eventually become waste 3, 4, 5 years down the road, taking responsibility for that by financing the process that UCC is now setting up, which at the time may be carried on through producer responsibility organizations. Then product life cycle, as part of the regulation, each product you're supposed to share how is its life cycle, how long does it stay in circulation, and all that detail. Regulation 8 provides for establishment and responsibility of the Producer Responsibility Organization. Producers will be encouraged to coalesce and come together and establish organizations, which organizations are the ones now, as we will see in the next part, which come to NEMA for licensing to take charge of collection of that waste on behalf of the producers that are contributing to it. Then those PROs or Producer Responsibility Organizations are expected to design extended producer responsibility schemes. They show how the product comes in, what is the life of that product, how long will it take in circulation, and how will it be collected and managed after its end of life. Part 3, management and collection of waste. Some of these were spoken to by the presentation, the keynote presentation by UCC, and I think we are lucky as a country to have these processes already happening. Pilots have been completed, projects are being implemented. This means once the regulation comes into force, we'll just tap into the existing structures that UCC and the ministry have put in place, so that we start implementing and enforcing the law. So for management of waste, there shall be central e-waste management facilities, collection centers, collection by product stewards, those who are agents of the producer, or collection by local governments, responsibility of retailers. What role do retailers have to play? We heard that there is Banana something who are retailers, but they are actively participating in collecting of the waste. So Regulation 14 provides for the role of retailers, responsibility of waste handlers on e-waste. We know there are food soldiers who are involved in this, and they mentioned about 56 waste handlers that have been participating in the pilot or who have been trained. These ones are the last mile collectors of this waste, and the regulation provides for their roles and responsibilities. Then segregated material and components in cases where certain material has to be segregated before it's transferred to the waste facility, financial arrangements, all that is provided for. And Regulation 18, this is Part 4, which provides for licensing, the procedure for application for a license to establish and operate a producer responsibility organization. We shall have a technical committee on e-waste, extended producer responsibility, which committee will be charged with evaluating these applications alongside NEMA. Then NEMA will be granting licenses, giving conditions for operation of a PRO, the duration of the license, variation, suspension, or revocation of a license, renewal of a license, and transfer of a license of producer responsibility organization in case where one producer responsibility either is acquired by another or sells interest or ceases to operate and there is need for that license to be transferred. Part 5, the return system. This provides for cases where when I buy a phone, there is an arrangement for me to take it back, and I think iPhones, Android applications, Android equipment is already using a return system where when the product is either obsolete or you're no longer using it, even if it's functional, you can return it. That is made provision for. Then duty to maintain a producer register. The PRO will have a duty to make sure it has a register of the producers under the organization, how much they produce, and making sure that they are paying their fair due that is supposed to contribute to the collection of that waste. Then extended producer responsibility plan. These plans will be shared with NEMA as a regulator annually to see what plans do they have, how are they going to manage the waste, what facilities are in place, and so on. Part 5, reporting and record keeping. That's straightforward. And then they'll be undertaking environment audits where annually a team of inspectors comes and assesses the extent to which they are complying with the standards they committed to. And then in Part 7, we are looking at appeals, offenses, and penalties. If there are any complaints in the way the regulation is being done, you can appeal to NEMA, and then there is an appeal structure, how you can escalate it. But there are also offenses. What happens when a PRO is not complying? What happens when a producer is not playing their part? So in a nutshell, those are the regulations on extended producer responsibility, and we think all going well between this quarter and next quarter, we should have these regulations in place so that we start working with stakeholders to implement. Some of the stakeholders here have been consulted, and we were also part of, I think, the launch of this project where some of the views were shared regarding these regulations. Special gratitude goes to, of course, government of Uganda that is supporting the process, but also we've received support in this regard from the World Bank, from NORAD to help in drafting and also benchmarking with other countries that have best practices in this regard. With those very many words, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, James Muhindo. A round of applause for our NEMA official. Thank you so much for that presentation. Thank you. We now have remarks, brief remarks from the last speaker from the audience in the structured feedback that I mentioned earlier. and that is a representative from the World Bank, Mr. Mikhail Bonchuk. Apologies if I got that wrong, but the floor is yours, sir.
You got it perfectly, thank you. Madam PS of the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, Madam Acting ED of UCC, dear colleagues from various institutions present here, I would like to extend my greetings and my gratitude to UCC for kindly inviting me to this event. I should say that I joined the digital program of the World Bank in Africa relatively recently, in July this year, and one of my observations in Africa so far is the centrality and the growing importance of the waste agenda to African countries. And today's event is a nice illustration of it in terms of what Uganda is doing. This is no surprise because of the size and significance of the waste agenda for globally, including for Africa. This significance stems from both the negative side of e-waste in terms of environmental footprint of hazardous materials emanating from e-waste, greenhouse gas emissions coming from improper disposal of electronic devices at the end of their lifetime, and the resulting health risks, especially accruing to those who deal with e-waste in improper way. And unfortunately, this disproportionately affects some of the vulnerable groups, such as women and sometimes even children. But however, there is also a positive side to e-waste. And you already heard a few figures from ITU colleague, from UCC, about the size of e-waste produced annually. But I would add to this estimates also the amount of unrealized economic value due to insufficient extraction of valuable chemical materials from obsolete electronic devices. So the amount of this unrealized value, annual amount globally, is close to $62 billion. This is a global amount, and I think that in Africa it would also be significant. Sometimes e-waste is compared to urban mine, and this is not only a metaphor. According to some estimate, for instance, the amount of gold that could be extracted from obsolete electronic devices is comparable to the amount of gold which is extracted annually from traditional gold mines. So there is a whole array of very valuable chemical materials that could be extracted from these devices. And with that, of course, comes an economic opportunity that could be created through construction of proper processing sites for e-waste. We are talking about green jobs. We are talking about trade in secondary raw materials coming from e-waste. We are talking about government revenue and ultimately, of course, about reduced climate footprint coming from e-waste. So it is against this perspective that the World Bank Group, which includes not only the World Bank but also other institutions, most notably International Finance Corporation, which is a private sector arm of the World Bank Group, approach the issue of e-waste. And key challenges here include lack of policies, lack of reliable data about the amounts of e-waste generated, lack of public awareness, prevalence of informal sector in processing of e-waste at the national level in many countries, insufficient financial resources available for arranging for proper processing of e-waste, illegal waste trade, and to this I would also add rapid product obsolescence of electronic devices that needs to be dealt with. So what I'm glad to observe in today's event is that I could, listening to the presentations of the preceding speakers, I can check the boxes across many of these items on the list of issues of challenges in terms of Uganda, of what Uganda is already doing. So even though clearly this is an unfinished agenda and much more needs to be done, but we are also observing a systematic effort across different agencies, a concerted effort of different agencies, and of course also involvement of the private sector in Uganda. And this is not only at the policy level, at the level of intentions and setting the agenda, but also in terms of very practical things which are illustrated by the items on display in this hall, which demonstrate the effort to reach out to the population, arrange for awareness building, and reaching out to individual citizens to convince them to deal with the waste properly. Now, what specifically the World Bank Group is doing, of course, we're paying very serious attention to the negative side of the waste, the risks associated with the waste, and perhaps one thing that I would cite in terms of infrastructure, digital projects financed by the World Bank. What we are trying to make sure is that e-waste should definitely not come as an afterthought, as the expression already used by one of the preceding speakers. Environmental and social protection framework is a part and parcel of each World Bank finance project, and colleagues from NITU, with whom we are working, would testify to that. And in increasing number of infrastructure projects financed by the World Bank, e-waste management plan comes in as an integral part of the overall framework, making sure that at the very outset of the project design, the types of e-waste to be generated, the amounts of this e-waste, and specific protective measures in terms of environment and social aspects are properly dealt with at the project design. So that's first. And otherwise, we are trying to address many things that were mentioned as examples in Uganda in terms of what's being done. It's extended product responsibility, it's investment in e-waste processing centers through public-private partnerships, through engagement between government and the private sector, because oftentimes neither government nor private sector cannot do it at a systemic level properly, so both sectors need to engage. There are very good examples across Africa, including in some of your neighboring countries, such as Rwanda and Kenya. Perhaps one thing that I would mention on top of that is the increasing importance of the so-called right to repair movement. It's exerting pressure on the producers of electronic equipment to make sure that these products do not become obsolete very soon, that they could be repaired, their lifetime could be extended, and I think that this effort in which government need to participate, and fortunately some of the major international vendors join this movement globally. So this effort could be coupled with the effort of proper disposal of obsolete equipment. And that also would have an important social effect, because this would contribute to longer lifetime of equipment and higher affordability of this equipment for the population. So we're talking also about device affordability, which is related important agenda. So in Uganda, we are privileged to work on the e-waste agenda with the government through the Uganda Digital Acceleration Project, and Joshua from NITU, who works on e-waste components specifically in NITU, is present here. He can be a consultant on what's specifically being done under the project. So we want to do more of it in Uganda and elsewhere in the Africa region. And for me, today's event serves as a learning experience and as a motivation of how this important agenda can be addressed in a systematic manner in Uganda, and that the lessons from Uganda could be applied, I believe, broader in this region and beyond. Many thanks. That's what I wanted to share with you in terms of remarks and takeaways from today's event. Over to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Let's put our hands together for the World Bank official with us here today. Very happy to have you, Mr. Brunchuk, and for those comments. We do have brief remarks from Joshua. Joshua, NITU, please step forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. A lot has been said by Mikhail of the project called UDAP that we're implementing under Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. So under the UDAP project, we've been able to achieve some of the upstream activities. The project specific scope on e-waste is under two phases, and the first phase involves the upstream activities which have all been undertaken, and the upstream activities included a feasibility study that guided on the national e-waste load. The consultant, who is also part of this room, who is we Center from Nairobi, Kenya, as the gentleman left, who is still around. This is a consulting firm that guided us on the study. So the study also included the business and financial sustainability model of the centers that will be established. It also guided us on the scalable infrastructure that is needed for recycling, repurposing, refurbishment, and material recovery. So the designs and the technology and the infrastructure needed for this kind of activities has all been presented because we want to focus on the circular economic principles of recovery, repurposing, and reuse. And then also the upstream activities funded by the World Bank and the UDAP also addressed the gaps. And we've been working with NEMA to bridge some of these policy gaps, which includes licensing or accrediting of e-waste companies, and then also speaking to the extended producer responsibility, like colleague from NEMA mentioned, to guide all those companies that manufacture, import, and bring in electronic equipment into this country, to have regulations and guidelines that speak to managing their responsibility when these devices that are imported reach end of shelf life. But then also we all know that in 2016, government of Uganda came up with a ban on importation of used computers, and that ban is still active. And the discussion that we're having here today stresses the importance that once the prerequisite requirements are in place for recycling, collection, and management of electronic waste, we believe that this ban will be lifted to allow in favorable and affordable devices that can speak to the inclusivity and the people down the chain, or who we call Montua 1C, who can't afford iPhone 16, but can still afford a very basic device that has been refurbished or imported used. Then also under the upstream activities, we've been able to identify land to guide the implementation of our next phase, the downstream, that speaks to setting up the 4 e-waste management centers across the country. So that's it. I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Let's put our hands together for Joshua Nitayu. And yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, but we thankfully coming to the end of it. And I've been permitted to breach all protocol with impunity by taking it upon myself in consultation with the Acting Executive Director, UCC, to invite our chief guest, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, Dr. Amina Zawede, to come and make her remarks. I implore all of us to give her a warm welcome.
The acting ED of UCC, Ms. Susan Wegoye. I see the Chief Operations Officer, UTCL, representatives from different government ministries, departments, and agencies, development partners, the private sector, media fraternity. Good afternoon to you all. Is it afternoon already, I believe? Yeah, good afternoon to you all. Today it's exactly 2 months since we last met in such a gathering at UCC to launch a pilot e-waste collection project. Today we have seen that this pilot project succeeded, and we are now seeing how to scale it up. Now the issue of managing waste, and particularly e-waste, is a very big issue and has a whole supply chain or value chain around it. As the government of Uganda, we are very keen and interested in how to manage solid waste, among others. And solid waste includes e-waste, disposal, and handling of computers, electronics, and so on. We have management of waste, you know, from food and etc. We have management of waste from the health sector, and so on and so forth. So at government level, we have organized the institutions that are handling the various kinds of solid waste in order for us to holistically manage how this waste is going to be dealt with. Because remember, when we are dealing with e-waste starts from our houses and homes, isn't it? And then it goes to the workplaces and at national level to so many other places. But how do we sort this waste from our homes? How do we sort it at office? How do we sort it in any other places or communities where people are managing and handling this waste? So as partners, because we want to work as a whole of government, when we are dealing with these initiatives, one would wonder, why do I have NEMA in this house? Why do I have Ministry of Local Government here? Why do I have Ministry of Lands, Ministry of Water, Office of Prime Minister? Because we all have the same, we are all focused in shooting in the same goalpost to attain results of ensuring that we first of all create harmony in terms of dealing with waste and also come off as one whole government. We don't want to manage e-waste successfully and leave the other parts of the solid waste, you know, hanging around. So we are doing this collectively in order to harmonize the process. And that is why feedback from all of you when it comes to e-waste management particularly, that is being handled, led by the Ministry of ICT together with all the partners on board, we come together or come off together as one voice. Today, as we reconvene, we are reflecting on what insights have we gained so far since we started this pilot 2 months ago. And more importantly, to agree on how to move forward. When Rebecca was talking about some of the lessons that we have learned as we are implementing the pilot, she came up with a number of do's that are required. We need to do A, B, C, D, this is a gap, and so on and so forth. At ministry level, where we are looking at policy-related issues, because our role is to define the enabling environment within which all this is supposed to be done. We have an e-waste policy of 2012, but we are reviewing that policy to update it to be able to support and handle the ecosystem of e-waste management. And I believe by the end of this financial year, we shall be in position to have an updated policy. We are also hearing from what NEMA presented some of the issues to do with regulation in terms of extended producer responsibility. We are also collectively reviewing the e-waste management guidelines. Because if you don't have guidelines along the way, then whatever pilot we have started or whatever project we have started will not be grounded in something that is sustainable. So guidelines have to be in place. These guidelines have to be communicated. We have to create awareness. We have to build capacity around it. And at the end of the day, if we have strong guidelines and enforcement mechanisms, then we shall be able to see how we successfully implement e-waste management. Within the value chain of e-waste management, there are opportunities for creating jobs, and we have seen them already. You know, the people who do the sorting in our homes, we sort and put in our bins. Somebody's going to come and carry away that waste. Somebody's going to go and sort it and then feed it into the various, value chains, whether it's refurbishment sites or sorting sites in terms of plastics and the different components, etc., etc. And when we are doing this, we are not running away from the confines of what government has defined under its national priorities. Under the National Development Plan 4 that we have started implementing this financial year, this project of e-waste collection falls under some strategic objectives that have already been pointed out under NDP4. And some of these strategic objectives emphasize sustainably increasing production, productivity, and value addition in many areas, including ICT. So when we are collecting waste, adding value to it, we are improving productivity, we are adding value, and at the end of the day, of course, we are creating employment for people. The other strategic objective under NDP4 is enhancing human capital development along the entire life cycle of whatever chain you're dealing with. And in here, we are dealing with waste management. So in that regard, we are going to be able to build capacity for experts in this area. We are going to also build capacity for different human resources required in this chain. And the other strategic objective under NDP4 is building and maintaining strategic sustainable infrastructure in different areas, agriculture, so on and so forth, including ICT. So what does this mean? I think the last person on the podium before I came was Nita, talking about what it is doing under the UDAP project. UDAP is a Universal Digital Acceleration Program under the Ministry of ICT, implemented by Nita U. And its main objective is to ensure that we improve connectivity, digitize as many services as possible, and also handle e-waste, among others. The World Bank representative, Mikhail, also talked about, building the e-waste management centers. But this also speaks to, setting up refurbishment centers. Refurbishment centers are going to help us to add value to the products that are being disposed of. There are refurbishment centers that have been set up outside Uganda. I think there is one next door that I have visited in Mombasa, where they collect used computers, used smartphones, tablets, and so on, wipe off the data of these devices, then remodel them or renew them to serve about, if they were 3 years old, to serve about 4 more years by school. These can be used by students, they can be distributed to schools, and so on and so forth. So you find that today, companies, especially in the corporate world, dispose of their devices every after 3 years. Today, if you disposed of your new phone after 3 years, would it be dead or still working? It would be still working, but it's because you have the ability and capacity to upgrade that you'll be able to move to a new one. Many of you have done hand-me-downs to to people in your family, your children, your relatives, and so on and so forth. But the corporate world, sometimes when they get rid of these computers, they don't know where to hand them down to. So they keep them piled up in their stores. We find so many computers piled up in stores of organizations, in different stores of schools, and so on and so forth. But these can be taken for refurbishment, and we have seen examples of successful refurbishment. I think today many of us drive used cars. These are refurbished for you, and then you actually go and say, you see, this number plate is very new, and we think the car is new, but it's actually used, but it is useful for another 5 or so years. So similarly, the computers can be that can be done for computers, and we get schools using them. Today, with the average age of Ugandans being 16 years old, you find that these people cannot afford these devices. Or even the families where they come from cannot afford them, and yet the demand for them has increased. After COVID, the demand for devices, the demand for internet, the demand for connectivity shot up. However, the price has not come down, and yet in economics, usually when the demand goes up, you find that the price, relatively goes down, but that is not so for the case of devices. And as government, we are working out mechanisms of ensuring that we waive taxes off some of the devices the target devices that we want the young people to access, but also to, review some of the regulations that we have put in place, like the ban on used devices. Of course, we are not allowing anything to come in to make our country a dumping site, but the regulations we are going to put in place are going to be able to guide accordingly what comes in and what shouldn't come in. So Uganda's story is one of rapid digital growth, given the dynamics that I have talked about. The new and younger, the young generation that we have, the evolving technological ecosystem that we are trading in is very rapid, and therefore, as a country, we are not allowing ourselves to be left behind. Over the past decade, millions of Ugandans, like I have explained, have come online. And the number of connected devices, from mobile phones to computers and smart appliances, has also multiplied many times over. And of course, this is a success to us if there's a multiplier effect. So under the Ministry of ICT, that is leading the digital transformation program, together with all our agencies and partner institutions that we have, we came up with the digital transformation roadmap that is guiding our digital transformation agenda, including managing and handling e-waste. So in this roadmap, we seek to expand access, inclusion, and innovation. But we also want to bring on board new responsibilities, particularly around what happens when devices reach the end of their useful life, which is the dumping of these devices. Around the world, e-waste has become one of the fastest growing waste streams. In 2022, the world generated nearly 62 million tons of e-waste. 62 million. Including what you dumped yesterday. I don't know who counted it, but it contributed to the 62 million. And yet only about 22% of that was formally collected or has been formally collected and recycled. So this initiative that we are doing of collection of e-waste is one of those ways in which we are formally doing so. So you find that if nothing is done today, and if nothing changes, the global e-waste is projected to reach 82 million tons by 2030. So as we are handling e-waste, we know the repercussions. We saw what happened in the Kitezi case of solid waste. That can also happen for us in the e-waste environment. So we cannot allow Uganda to contribute to the statistic of growing to 82 million by 2030 without taking action. So this pilot that we are reviewing today shows that accessible and trusted collection channels, supported by simple traceability tools, can indeed work in our context. I mentioned to you that a number of institutions have been clustered to work on the issue of solid waste management. Under there, we have the Ministry of ICT. Of course, when I say the Ministry of ICT, it's together with the agencies, UCC, NITA, anybody working on waste under that program, to handle e-waste issues. We have KCCA as well, because it is at the center of solid waste, all kind, the whole umbrella, including e-waste in the city. We have Ministry of Lands, because it also has waste-related issues, and it is a Ministry of Lands that has to identify where we set up these waste collection centers or dumping sites and so on. Then we have a Ministry of Water. There's a lot of waste that comes and is handled through the Ministry of Water and Environment. We have Office of the Prime Minister. That is the leader of government business, so it has to oversee what we are all doing. And then lastly is Ministry of Works. As Works is doing all its setup of all the transport infrastructure, it is also dealing with waste. Then we have the services sector, where we have Ministry of Health, that is also one of the creators of waste that has to be disposed of. So together we are coming up with it might not be necessarily consolidated, but a system that is going to support us to dispose of the waste in the different areas. So the insights that have been created or generated from this pilot of e-waste will help us to plan the necessary infrastructure, classify roles, and strengthen the chain from public handover to safe handling and recycling. As the acting ED said, collection is the first step of e-waste management. Without collection, there can be no recycling, there will be no recovery, and we shall not have accountability. So this pilot is demonstrating what the first step looks like. Of course, coming after putting up an enabling environment. That is why it's necessary for us to review our policies and guidelines in order for them to be able to match up to what we want to do when it comes to collection. This pilot, as mentioned, has been conducted in real market schools, offices, and communities across Kampala, Wakiso, and Mukono. Responsible e-waste handling has been communicated and people educated that it is not only about the environment. It is about protecting public health. It is about strengthening consumer trust and data safety, and also opening doors for green jobs, new business models in Uganda's emerging circular economy, and so on. And when it comes to protecting consumer trust and data, some people are keeping their, I think Rebecca was asking where are the TVs. I don't know whether TVs store data, but I know people are keeping laptops. They are keeping computers or phones simply because they fear what will happen to the data on these phones, especially those who are data conscious. There are those people who work in data sensitive areas and don't want to let go of their devices. But if they're educated on how this is handled or on how the refurbishment centers will handle this, then it will be an easier way and journey to move. This work directly supports our policy. Like I said how it is aligned with the NDP4, but also with the policies that the ministry has put in place to support e-waste management. The pilot demonstrates so many things that I don't want to repeat, but because I am the guest of honor, I will repeat some of them to emphasize the point. It demonstrates that we have to set up practical collection points, both public and partner-based. There is a lot of work we have to do under e-waste that cannot be done by government alone. But we have to bring together development partners, we have to bring together the private sector, because they're the ones who are going to create avenues for employment opportunities for our young people. The other issue or thing that the pilot demonstrates is linking last mile through trained community agents and e-wastepreneurs. the community agents are supposed to create awareness. They are supposed to educate the masses in their different languages. I think the other day, about 2 days ago, today is Tuesday, last week, I was attending a conference where we were looking at, it was translating African languages leveraging on AI. And at that conference, there is an entity in Uganda that has translated 31 local languages of Uganda using AI. They are called Sunbird. And what does this mean? That as we create awareness, as we educate the masses, everybody, I think every home, literally almost every home in Uganda has a phone. Might not be necessarily a smartphone, but they have these QWERTY phones, the basic feature phones. And at one point, they're going to dispose of them. But how they dispose of them or where they have to dispose of them, they need to be educated. And they need to be educated not in English, not in the Luganda that we use here in the central, but in their language, Acholi or whatever that they speak. And therefore, we have to create communities of awareness, of education, where we speak to people in their different languages. This pilot also demonstrates that we need to ensure that what is collected is safely transported, logged, and reported in order for us to have statistics that will inform our decision making. The project also builds something even more important. It is a working coalition across government. I mentioned the entities that are involved in handling solid waste management, but also as we are rolling out this pilot, we are bringing together all entities that are handling regulation so that we don't have split regulation. You know, when regulation is split, if Ministry of ICT is regulating, UCC is regulating, NEMA is regulating, the people we are regulating will get confused. So coming together will help us harmonize what each one of our roles is as we present one government of Uganda, but not several governments of Uganda. And that is what I stand here before you to ensure that we commit to as a government. So today is about strengthening that coalition and not duplicating mandates. Sometimes mandates are being duplicated because somebody has the resources. But as we are implementing these resources, please look and identify the structures of government and we ensure that we work within them. As we move into phase 2, the unity that we are creating as a result of this coalition must deepen, guided by a shared commitment to a sustainable digital future. So as we talk about the various committees that we are constituting towards this, please remember that all this is anchored under the leadership of a digital transformation program. And let us convene under that program to be able to harmonize what we need to do towards enforcing and implementing e-waste management policies. Through the National Steering Committee, we will continue aligning policy, operations, data, and communication so that end-of-life management becomes a standard sector practice and not only stop at a pilot or a project, but become a norm of what we are supposed to do. I take this opportunity to commend Uganda Communications Commission, UCC, and together with all the implementing partners that include the private sector, NEMA, local governments, ministries, and development partners for the progress that we have made so far to showcase the potential and ability that we can manage this, you know, it is an elephant, e-waste, the e-waste elephant. We shall start by taking off the small tail, the leg, until we, you know, get to handle the trunk, if we are systematic and committed in our coalition. So let us convert today's dialogue into concrete commitments. Let us scale what works, and let us make responsible end-of-life handling the standard practice for every Ugandan ICT device. I am aware that as you got your invitations, you were told to come along with what to dispose of. But I don't know whether this is the only disposal we have got today, or the first full one was rolled away. But let us be the ambassadors of informing and educating people on how to deal with e-waste, because if we don't, those products you're keeping in your houses, I don't know whether they are the results as to why so many people today are just dying suddenly. I don't know, but maybe it could be. So let us get rid of that waste. Because it is not stinking, it doesn't mean that it is safe with you in your houses. I am informing you about this so that we know that we are not just managing waste, but we are protecting health, we are preserving the environment and building the foundation for Uganda's circular digital economy. I thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you for coming today to be a part of this journey that we are walking towards handling and managing waste. I see police is represented, because I know as we are enforcing, we shall be keeping law and order in order to ensure that we are dealing with this waste management issue in a successful way. I say this for God and my country. Thank you.
Let's put our hands together for the PS. Our champion of e-waste management, really. Because like I said earlier, it's only 2 months ago that she was with us, and here she is right now. It's not easy, given the kind of office she runs. So we do appreciate that very much, Madam PS. We've certainly come to the end of this session, of this engagement. Time check is exactly 1 p.m. So the PS ended just in time for us to go for lunch. But before we do that, we have a photo opportunity. We would like to show off that we were around when the PS was here with us at this engagement. So we will have a photo opportunity, PS, top management, UCC, and our representatives of all our partners in the house. So that will come next. But we do have the bin as well, and it was mentioned that it was brought here for a purpose, that those of us who came along with items that we are ready to let go of today and never see again. The bin is right here, and you will be welcome to place your items in there. Unless it's bigger than the bin can accommodate, then we'll find other ways of accommodating it. And then lastly, and very lastly, we do have lunch will be served in the basement for those who have obtained coupons. So walk down to the basement with the guidance of the people who will be assigned to do that, to show you where to go. Make sure you do have that coupon along with you. So it's at this juncture that I invite the PS and the Acting Executive Director to lead the way as we pose for the photograph that marks the end of today's engagement. So a round of applause for everyone who turned up. Thank you so much for being here. And let's go out there and start biting on the elephant bit by bit. Thank you and good afternoon. can have a number of us joining in. The space is quite sufficient. Come forward, step forward, and join